It was open?
Just a smidge.
That crazy niffler thing's on the loose again?
Might be.
Look for it. Look! Oh. His neck's bleeding. He's hurt. Oh, wake up. Mr. Nomad. Mercy, Lewis, what is that?
Nothing to worry about. That is a murtlap.
What else have you got in there?
And that, of course, is a clip from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. The star is Eddie Redmayne, of course, the star of the Fantastic Beasts. However, Eddie Redmayne is the human star. Hello, Eddie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
It's very nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Tell us about Newt Scamander. This is a fascinating role. Tell us everything that we need to know.
Newt Scamander is a magizoologist.
Of course.
I think he's maybe the only magizoologist. But he is an English wizard who arrives at the beginning of this film in New York in the 1920s, and he has spent a year in the field saving and studying magical creatures who in the wizarding world are illegal because they might give magic away. And at the beginning of the film, he arrives in New York, and a few of them escape from his Mary Poppins style case.
Where does this sit in the J.K. Rowling pantheon? You know, so we're familiar with some of the animals, we're familiar with some of the spells. What else?
Well, it's in the Potter world, as it were, in that huge universe of lore and sort of intricacy that J.K. Rowling has created. But it's set 70 years before, so it's on the other side of the Atlantic from Hogwarts, and it's the Roaring Twenties. And there's a whole kind of difference between how the American wizarding world is versus the British wizarding world. So it's kind of what we know, and there's that familiarity, but also a whole fresh new stuff.
So 70 years adrift, and yet we learn that you were thrown out of Hogwarts.
Yeah,
and that Dumbledore supported you.
Yes.
So how old is Dumbledore?
Well, Dumbledore's younger than Dumbledore hasn't. I think his age specifically would be in his 30s, maybe 40s. You're testing me here.
Yes, I am.
But I'm not sure who they're cast as Dumbledore. So I imagine there'll be some leeway.
Okay.
So he's been his teacher. He's been Newt's teacher, and they have a sort of enigmatic friendship.
Last time you were on the programme, it was where you were talking about Lily Albert, we were talking about a Danish girl. And when we were discussing then, we were talking about your the mannerisms and the body language, and talk about Stephen Hawking, of course. And I was looking very closely at the way you play Newt Scamander. When we see you arrive in New York City, the way you carry yourself, the way you hold yourself, the way you walk, it reminded me a bit of Charlie Chaplin in that kind of silent movie, but also your gait and the way you're walking and your boots. I don't know, it just seemed Chaplin-esque. Is there any truth in that, do you think?
Well, in the script, which was kind of a wonder to read, because J.K. Rowling's words are wonderful, but also the description around it is so much more intricate than any script I'd ever read. And when you first see Newt, he is described as having this Buster Keaton-esque quality and having an unself-conscious air and a sort of specific walk, which was wonderful and sort of delicious in some ways for an actor, but also kind of intimidating. So I did go back actually and look at Buster Keaton films and Tatty films and a bit of Chaplin but it was actually a guy I met who tracks creatures for a living, who was showing me how he does it, and he had this very open-toed stance that was that meant that I felt like I could ground it in some reality rather than just doing a.
And he had an open-toed stance for a reason.
Yeah, he did, because when you're trying to be utterly silent tracking a creature, you sort of have to spread your weight, so you put your one foot at an angle so that you can choose exactly where you place the other foot, and you put that one down at an angle. So it was a kind of. It felt, it was curious.
And would it be fair to say that Newt is happier in the company of animals than he is with people? Because whenever you're talking to anyone in the movie, you never look at them.
Yeah.
You're just looking slightly off.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He is, I would say, useless at talking to humans and wizards, but it was one of the qualities I loved about him. I think he's been a bit damaged in relationships with wizards, and so, but with his creatures, you see this whole, actually quite sort of athletic side to him that feels very, very different.
Is he a good wizard?
I think he's quite a good wizard, but I don't think he's like extraordinary. He's not the chosen one like Harry.
Was it? This might sound like a really childish question, but was it thrilling?
was so thrilling.
But just to have the wand, which we all know is a stick, which has been painted and all that. But it must have been, as someone who's grown up with all these books, I don't know how many of them you read, whether you read all of them, but there must have been a frisson.
I think it was during the auditions that they sort of brought out this tray full of wands and said, Ed, just pick a wand. And it did. Your inner 9-year-old was having a disco. It was sort of one of the great moments. But weirdly, I then got complete stage fright when I picked up said wand, because you think you'd be really good at it. And I had to. We were ushered promptly to wand school, where we were all taught to find our inner wand.
So you auditioned?
Oh, I had various meetings with David Yates, the director, and then I got to read the script finally. Everything about this film was so
that's not an
shrouded
audition.
No, so I was cast, but I then went and auditioned with the other actors.
Oh, fine. Well, that's easy.
Well, do you know
if you've
what?
already got the job.
If you're neurotic like I am, if you audition for something, or if you don't audition for something, then you're convinced that you turn up on day one and you sort of display your interpretation of a character, and you think that the producers are going to then go, really? He's going to do it like that? And you then get fired. So what was lovely was actually the auditioning the other people was my opportunity to try and inhabit Newton, see if they were okay with it, which fortunately they were.
The Prohibition era New York looks amazing. It almost has a feel of Gotham City to it, really, in as much as it's clearly quite a dark place. It feels quite a dark place. There are rumours and there is division and there are scares running, and society feels a little bit divided. Maybe this movie is going to turn out to be quite prescient, I don't know, but the look of the city where this takes place is beautiful, isn't it? I realise that's not a question.
No, it's not, but it was beautiful, and the film is set in New York in the 1920s, and my wife and I were so excited when I got cast because we thought that would be wonderful to go and spend some time in New York, but it was shot in sunny Watford, and where they built New York, and it was. But what was amazing is I think that films of this scale, a lot of it is CGI, but actually the amount they built was dumbfounding, and the craftsmanship it felt really authentic.
So that's the thing to remember. So when we see you going through this extraordinary New York, you're actually in Watford.
In Watford.
This, I guess, is a departure for you in as much as you are now in this extraordinary Potter world, and the fans are really serious about this. They're very hardcore, and I know you've talked about it before at Comic-Con and places like that, but what does that feel like? Because the details matter, and everything needs to fit.
Yeah, but that's what Jo is so wonderful at. Is she creates this. There's such a thoroughness to the worlds that she creates. But what we felt making the film was Catherine Waterston, who's in the film, describes it kind of wonderful. Like the fans feel it's like supporting a football team or something. When they go to a match, they're willing you to win, and we have felt that kind of. Support from them. So, but now is the nerve-wracking moment when it comes out into the world, and we hope people like it.
And do you look at the reviews?
Oh gosh, I do. Yeah.
Yes. So you know that they're pretty good.
Fortunately, I think they have been.
They're pretty good / very good.
Oh, that's very kind. I wish I could not look at reviews, but I do. But no, we'll wait and see what the fans think. But yeah.
Yeah, I think they'll follow on. I think it feels a joy for my eldest was 10 when the first Harry Potter book came out. So therefore I've read each book 3 times, so immersed completely in this world. And it's such a delight to have these spells back and to have some of the beasts that we're familiar with. Oh, hang on, I've heard about that. Now, as you're the magizoologist, the beasts that you have with you, a lot of them are in this extraordinary bag that you've got. What do we need to know about these animals?
I don't think you need to know anything specifically going in. And one of the things I loved about the film was it's for people who love Potter, but you can also see it without having read anything about the Potter film. But the beasts all have these sort of wild and bizarre idiosyncrasies and traits. So I have little Pickett, who is he's got a bow truckle, and he's
like a stick insect.
He's a little stick insect that lives in my top pocket and has attachment issues, but is very good at picking locks. And then I have this kind of weird thing called a swooping evil, who sort of dangles like a conker on my finger, but when you throw him out like a yo-yo, he turns into a kind of pterodactyl who eats brains. So there's a whole variety of, and what I love about Newt is he kind of loves the sort of gross, gnarly ones as much as he loves the sweet, cute ones.
My guess is that when you were signed on and when you were asked to do the part, that J.K. gave you a pretty impressive backstory. I mean, that's. I mean, I've interviewed her a couple of times.
Yeah.
That's the kind of woman she is.
Yeah, I mean, so quite before this film, I'd played a few real people, and when you play real people, or with Stephen Hawking, you get to meet him, and with Lily Elbe, you have all these diaries and photographs, and so I was curious going into playing a character that was fictional. But when you meet Jo, she has. Like this moment is a tiny segment of her whole arc that she has mapped out with such intricacy that it's as if they are living in her imagination. So she was amazing to speak to about it.
How big is this arc?
That's a really good question. What we heard was about the past, and going forward, we're kind of kept in the dark. And that's not me just being coy. I read somewhere that there's, I think it's 17 years is the story that she's planned. But I think, and they've talked about 5 of these films, but they'll only happen if people enjoy this one. So.
Okay, well, let's assume that people enjoy this one. So I think the answer to the question, therefore, just assembling it from your answer is, it's a pretty big arc. I mean, we know that she can plot over 7 books and 8 movies. So this is going to be this is opening episode. Pay close attention because she knows what she's doing.
She does know what she's doing. And what was wonderful is she'd come onto set and she was writing the second film at the time, and she would go, I'm not allowed to say anything, but, and then she would sort of launch forth into a sort of volcano of information. And
like what?
I can't tell you anything. It was so infectious that he was, no, I can say nothing.
Okay, no, it's right. We're familiar with this kind of...
I bet you are. It's so boring.
Go on, please tell us. No, I can't tell you anything. So what are we seeing you in next?
I've just been voicing a character for Nick Park's new film, which is an Aardman film called Early Man, and working with that man has been a complete joy. So I think that'll be... So I'm going all plasticine. So that hopefully
it's a good look. It's a good look for 2017.
Thank you,
Eddie. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, mate. Nice to see you.